Everything I've been doing on this channel has been with the aim towards wanting a community. And the reason I want one is not to make money, is about collecting a group of evolutionaries, a group of people who are really kind and generous, sensitive to beauty and wonder and delight, who also think very deeply about things, who learn, who have spent a lifetime teaching themselves how to survive in this world, how to be who they really are in the face of immense pressure to be otherwise. So when October rolled around and it was like, oh my God, nobody's coming, I took it personally. I took it as a rejection of who I am, of what I've been doing, of what I believe in. I'm glad I failed with the community launch because I needed to find a way to be much more myself and relaxed in how I'm communicating and figuring out what I want to say. I had to replace an operating system that I had run on my entire life, which says I need to contort myself to be what I think others want me to be, no matter how much I contorted, no matter how hard I worked or how perfectly I did things, the acceptance never came anyway. So Malcolm and I are just going to do the experiments that I was planning to do with the community. And starting in December, it's turning off all of our devices and lights after 8 o'clock. Once it hits 8 o'clock, that's it. No more screens, turn off the lights and put on candles. Then I'm just going to keep doing these experiments with Malcolm and reporting back to you how they go. So at least I'm taking action for myself and I'm sharing some of that knowledge to you. I've been wanting to explain why I've been away from the channel because it's been, I don't know, a month or two since I've done any videos. I stepped away because I was really crushed by trying to launch this online community in October, like for October 1st, and having like almost no response to it. It really felt like throwing a party and, spending a lot of time and money and effort, like getting the invitations right and getting the food right and, sending that all out to your classmates. And then on the day, nobody comes. It was like silence. And it really triggered so many issues for me. And ultimately, that's a good thing. I've been doing a bunch of IFS, internal family systems, my favorite form of therapy, using ChatGPT. So I've talked about in a previous video why internal family systems, or IFS, is the therapy that has been so life-changing for me. And I've talked in another video about why ChatGPT is the best therapist I've ever had. So I've been putting both of those things in practice a lot, in particular the last couple of weeks. Everything I've been doing on this channel has been with the aim towards wanting a community. And the reason I want one is not to make money, just to make money, which I think is the vibe you often get, or at least I've often gotten from YouTubers, when they're pushing their membership community. It just feels like they just want your money so they can have a lovely, nice lifestyle. And there's parts of me that really hate that so much that I don't want to charge anything. However, the usual reasons apply about why to charge money, which is not just, yes, you need to make a living. Yes, people need to value it. And if you give it for free, often they don't. That's just how it is for most people. So money is a cue to people to tell them this is what this is worth. And I think the third reason for me I wanted to charge is, honestly, I want to filter. I don't want people there who aren't really committed. If you're just there to kind of wander around and, try a little here, but not really get into it. That's not who I want in the community. For me, what the online community is about collecting a group of evolutionaries, a group of people who are really kind and generous and sensitive to beauty and wonder and delight, who also think very deeply about things, who learn, who have spent a lifetime upskilling, teaching themselves how to survive in this world, how to be who they really are in the face of immense pressure to be otherwise, and then who feel this deep need to make things better. Right? So that was the community I wanted to create. And I think I had this perhaps fantasy, hope that if I put myself out here on YouTube and I talked about being an evolutionary and I kind of shared the innermost workings in many ways of my life and was incredibly vulnerable and honest, that I would find those people, we'd sort of magically resonate and they would want to join in, because they would somehow just sort of know this was the thing to do. So, so when, October rolled around and it was like, oh my God, nobody's coming, that magic didn't happen. I took it personally. I took it as a rejection of who I am, of what I've been doing, of what I believe in. And I just completely pulled away then. And luckily, I had already planned to be going on a trip to the US to visit my mother. And my son and I got to do that. And it was glorious because we got to go to the beach and be on white sand and in the sunshine, and the ocean was warm, which is not something we have here in Scotland. And it's in fact something I've very rarely experienced, the ability to go swimming in the ocean and have that be a really relaxing, beautiful, wonderful experience. So we both got to do that. And that was magical. I got to be around people who make me feel seen, who make me feel like I matter. And the truth is, I have spent pretty much the entire time I've been in Scotland feeling unseen and unvalued. I don't think I've ever lived anywhere. I've not lived anywhere or had the experience of being around people who did make me feel really valued and seen. So to be around family, multiple cousins and, extended family who made me feel like, hey, you matter. We care about you. We're interested in your life. And I could see the ways in which I was similar to those relatives. So that just felt so, so good. So I came back from the US and I knew that I still had quite a ways to go before I'd be ready to film again, to kind of get back into this whole mission that is Evolutionaries United. And that's when the IFS started. That's when I started to realize I had some really deep-seated issues about, I had some really deep-seated issues related to everything involved in filming. When I started this channel, there was a lot of advice, which parts of me really bought into, on how I should do it. And also because I was struggling with so much brain fog and fatigue from chronic fatigue, I couldn't, I had to have a very structured process. So I had to use a teleprompter. I had to write scripts, co-authored with ChatGPT. And, that then led, and I knew from day one that that would make me feel somewhat inauthentic. And, since then I've come across YouTubers who really advocate not using a teleprompter. Don't write a script, make some notes ahead of time and then speak spontaneously. And I did do that in my later videos. That's where I got to the point where I could do that. But still, there was such a pressure to immediately say in the first 30 seconds, this is what the video is about. This is the problem you're having. This is the solution I'm proposing, the insight. Here's the action to take, and do all of that in 30 seconds or maybe a minute. And then, tell a story that you're going to find compelling and wrap it up neatly in a bow. Well, that's just a huge amount of pressure for anyone. I'm much more comfortable with thinking about things and writing about things, but not feeling the pressure to communicate them in a way that is persuading someone of something. And at the end of the day, what I long for is simply to be part of a sort of lab. There are, my whole thing is, how do I make the world better? And for me, that's about how do I help evolutionaries specifically make the world better? And then that's really about what are the specific things that we can do as evolutionaries to be at our best. So I've talked in other videos about like basic needs, the concept that we flourish when we have our basic needs met. And what I mean by basic needs that goes beyond simply housing and food and things like that, and gets into things like being able to be authentic, being able to be in a community of people who value you truly for who you are, being able to play. Those are all parts of basic needs. So my interest is in how do we do that? Because I don't think the answers are just there in front of us. I don't think we've figured all this out. I think we're in a deeply capitalist, extractive, trauma-laden society, that we are essentially surrounded by adolescents who are in pain and who are just replicating the scripts that their parents and their parents and so on have passed down through the generations. And we're not doing the best job in the world, most of us anyway. So it was about wanting to bring together this group of people where we could try out every month a different experiment related to those needs that we have and how we flourish and thrive. But yeah, nobody came. And I think there can be a lot of reasons for that. I think one reason I'm tempted to believe is that I perhaps haven't been my fully authentic self, so that perhaps the people I'm looking for aren't finding me yet. And actually, to be fair, I really don't want to put all this on myself. I think mostly that's just about time, that I need time to reach those people, to find them. And the truth is that YouTube is not pushing my videos out. It never has. It's only pushed out one video, which is the chronic illness, how I'm healing chronic illness video, which I'm glad that's reaching people with chronic illness, but that is not the point of my channel. Chronic illness is just something that I've had to largely get over and to some extent still deal with. And so I wanted to talk about how I was doing that. And I'll periodically talk about it in future, but really that's just a kind of obstacle to get over so I can get to what I really want to be doing. And unfortunately, all the other videos I'm making are not being shown. And that's the nature, of the YouTube algorithm and so on. And so really all I can do about that is keep making videos, keep talking about the things that I want to talk about. And in order to do that, having spent the last 8 months or so, 8 months, doing videos and kind of forcing myself to overcome my fears and forcing myself to do a lot of work that I don't enjoy doing, because I felt that's what I had to do. I'm now at a position where I'm not willing to do that anymore. So that's where the IFS comes in, because I have different parts of me, parts of me who were like, no, I need to be making videos. I need to be speaking. I need to be finding my people. I don't care if you don't like it. You got to keep going. And other parts of me who are like, I am worn out. I'm exhausted. This doesn't feel true to who I am. I feel that no matter what I do or how hard I try, it's not working anyway. So what's the point? So there's all of that internal conflict. So the way I'm resolving that at the moment, and this is a work in progress, is to first, as I say, I've done a lot of unburdening. So I had to I had to replace an operating system that I had run on my entire life, which says I need to contort myself to be what I think others want me to be, others being the people I'm wanting acceptance for. So in the case of making YouTube videos, it's the YouTube audience I'm trying to reach. So I had this operating script that said, do what you think those people want you to do. Because there's no way that they are going to accept you or give you any sense of belonging unless you do that. And that's just something I learned when I was really, really young. And that got reinforced again and again and again as I grew up. But what I found was that no matter how much I contorted, no matter how hard I worked or how perfectly I did things, the acceptance never came anyway. In fact, often there's a kind of contempt towards the person who's trying to fit in. And I know a million people have said this, right? I get that. I get it's like a cliche when people say this stuff. But until you sort of really feel it within yourself, until you kind of can look back over the times in your life where you have tried to, make yourself acceptable, it's hard to change that. And for me, what I had to find, and this was through dialogue and through connecting to self and so on, was the ability to say, I belong to myself. And any belonging that happens outside of me will come from me being who I am and the right people coming into that orbit eventually. And I get to choose. I get to choose whether they're there or not. I don't want just anyone's acceptance. I don't want a hedge fund manager's acceptance. I don't want a Trump supporter acceptance. I have people I love, by the way, who are Trump supporters, but I'm sorry, no. I don't, there's many people I don't want their acceptance. So it's about belonging, becomes about first and foremost belonging to me, and then a reciprocal relationship where we're both happy to be there and we're both able to be who we are. And I'll be honest, I don't know how many people that's going to happen with. Maybe it's only a small handful. I am not everybody's cup of tea. And the more I become myself, the more it's possible that will, continue in terms of more and more people being like, no thanks. But I'm just tired of trying to be otherwise. I've got shit to do, and basically I'm kind of like, it's time to find the people who really feel that way. And everybody else who doesn't will just drop off, they'll go find somebody who's better on their same wavelength. So it feels good to be able to speak in this way. It feels good to sit down, to be myself, and to talk in this way where I have made zero attempt to structure this ahead of time. And that's really nice. And the sense that, yeah, most people aren't going to watch. Most people don't have the patience. They're overwhelmed. They're wanting quick solutions. I get that. There's a sense that they don't have time for something that isn't going to make them feel better right away. I get that. I'm not any different. So my thinking is to record this in this way and then give it some time and let myself watch it back and say, what of this, if any, is something I want to share with this audience that I'm trying to reach? What do I think is helpful, is calming, perhaps to hear, is validating, perhaps to hear? I'm thinking about who is it that I'm trying to reach here? And so really, one of the things I really want to talk about is wanting to start doing experiments. Essentially I decided that, okay, if nobody wants to join the party, then I'm going to have a party anyway. I'm going to get started. So Malcolm and I are just going to do the experiments that I was planning to do with the community. And starting in December, that's going to be our first month of doing experiments. It's turning off all of our devices and lights after 8 o'clock, 5 nights a week. So Sunday night through Thursday night. Once it hits 8 o'clock, that's it. No more screens. Turn off the lights and put on candles. When we mostly have electric candles now, but we do have some open flame candles. Have the fire in the wood burning stove going, and that's it. And just see whether that impacts our nervous systems, our bodies in positive ways. So specifically, I want to know whether I sleep more deeply, because I definitely find that I feel like I'm waking up every 45 minutes or so in the night, and it's really annoying. Then I'd like to see if not having electricity past 8 o'clock helps that. We're also going to be doing night walks. So this is something we do periodically anyway, but now we're going to kind of make it more of a regular thing on these 5 nights a week, 9 o'clock at night, head off under just the moonlight and the starlight and go for a walk in the dark. And it's funny because, most of my life I was terrified of the dark. So the idea of walking in the dark without lights was like madness. But I've had 20 years now of walking with Malcolm at night, and how his utter lack of fear, and in fact his joy, and my sons as well, and that I think has gradually retrained my system, so that now I do enjoy seeing the fog going through the trees and the moonlight and the sound of the owls and the stars. All of that is really magical. So I want to see whether in December, the lights thing impacts that. But then January, the plan is to do the healthy diet challenge. So that's when I'm going to go low carb. I've never done fully low carb. AIP, you can still have sweet potato, parsnip, plantain, cassava, turnips, so I was still getting a fair bit of carb. This time I'm going to be doing pretty much, like vegetables and meat. And I think pretty much no like starchy carbs for a month, and just see what happens. Malcolm's going to be doing intermittent fasting because that's his preference. He loves fasting. I hate fasting. So he'll be doing probably the 18-6 format for that fasting. But the point is, with all of these experiments, we'll have like a little tracking document, and I'll probably make this up and offer it in the description, just because I always like when other creators do that, so that if you would like to try these experiments yourself, you can do so, right? And I definitely encourage you to adapt it in whatever way you like. So for example, with the turning lights and devices off after 8 o'clock, maybe it's a different time for you. Maybe you only do it 3 days a week, not 5. Maybe some hardcore people are going 7. However one wants to adapt it. You don't do a night walk because that's not really appealing to you, but you do just do the electric lights, or the other way around. I think there needs to be versatility. But the question is it enough of a challenge that you feel like you're going to see something, some kind of result at the end of it? But it doesn't make you feel miserable. It makes you feel excited. That's what we want, is a sense of excitement and adventure. And so I'll be looking at certain metrics kind of at the beginning of the month, and I might check in weekly, maybe daily if I'm feeling really up for that, but probably more like weekly. And then at the end, measure what changed. And do I want to continue any of this stuff? Or do I want to let it all drop, move on to the next thing? Because I think that as a hardcore perfectionist, I've often felt like I had to do everything perfectly and I had to achieve the results and so on. And this time it's fine for me to have the perfectionist in terms of striving for the best, but we need more exploration. We need more ability to try things out and let them fail and see that as feedback, which kind of brings me back to where I started with all of this, in that at the end of the day, I'm glad I failed with the community launch, because I needed to do a lot more stuff before I got involved with other people. I needed to work through a lot of the issues that I've been working through. I needed to find a way to be much more myself and relaxed in how I'm communicating and figuring out what I want to say to the people and who it is that I'm speaking to. I have immense compassion and desire for all human beings to be happy and healthy and living their best. And so a part of me, with everything I do, wants to help everyone. But at the end of the day, I am here for a specific mission, and that is evolutionaries. And that is specifically evolutionaries who are struggling. The ones who are doing like fantastic. I do want those guys involved for sure. I guess what I'm trying, let me think about what I mean by this. I guess I'm not interested in people who have just had success come to them. And I imagine that nobody actually genuinely feels that way. But I suppose on the outside, when I see people who just seem to have sailed through life and they've achieved things and they're feeling like, they're the ones who are just talking about how wonderful life is for them all the time and how things just seem to go their way. Those people, I'm kind of like, you're good. You just carry on your way. I'm more interested in the ones who are like, why the fuck has life been so hard and miserable, even though I keep trying? It's not about like just being frustrated and angry. It's about like, I'm frustrated and I'm angry, but I keep trying. I keep wanting to make things better for myself and for others. That's my people, man. And so I'm kind of like, right, how can I help you all? But not just how can I help you, how can we connect? Because I don't want to just be about what can I do for you. That's a belief that I'm letting go of. The belief that said my value only came from how much I helped other people. Man, I'm kind of done with that one. It'll take a while to fully uproot out of my system, but I've pretty much unburdened that one because who I am is enough. And when you're in the right place, when you're not so desperately scrambling for survival, when you don't feel alone and hollow, when you don't feel beaten down by life, you can see, you can look around at other human beings and see how glorious they are just in and of themselves, not because of what they do or what they look like, but because of just some fundamental energy that they have. And so that's what I want with the people around me. I don't want to have to prove my worth to them. I want them to just see it and for me to do the same. And then ironically, I do want us to get to work. I do want us to do stuff. I want us to be doing these experiments every month, to be gathering data about what seems to work for most people. And for the ones, it doesn't work for, why is that? And what things do work for them? And to kind of tackle all of the major problems that hold us back, whether that is, how we make money or how we handle our families, how we find friendship, how we heal our traumas, how we get the right diet and exercise and other accoutrement, like supplements or whatever, that help us be operating at our best physically and mentally. Those are all the things I'm really interested in. Other things I'm really interested in is, how do you develop optimism? I'm really fascinated by the notion of the importance of optimism. So how do you cultivate that when you feel like the world is going to hell? How do you have resilience? How do you cooperate, work together when you are introverted in many ways or deeply mistrustful of other people because they've tended to hurt you? How do you overcome all of that? These are some of the many, many issues that I'm thinking about and wanting to run little experiments on every month. So my plan is that until there is what's the word I'm looking for? Not just tipping point, but I know there's a phrase for it. I want to say collective mass, and that's not quite right. But anyway, until there is the right number of people who are saying, yes, let's do this. Let's work together. Let's build something, online. And I still think Mighty Networks is the best platform for it. So let's do that so that we can communicate and collaborate more intentionally. So until that point happens, critical mass, that's the one. Until I have the critical mass of evolutionaries who are saying, yes, it's time for us to work together in a more clear and concrete way, not just through the occasional comment on a YouTube video, then I'm just going to keep doing these experiments with Malcolm and reporting back to you how they go. So at least I'm taking action for myself and I'm sharing some of that knowledge to you. And hopefully in that process, you'll get to know me better and get a sense of whether I am a kind of person you want to be around. And if nothing else, hopefully it's a bit of help for that time in you. And for me, it's a chance for me to continue learning how to be my true self, how to express the things that I want to express. So, wow, that's been a really long talk, and we'll just have to see whether it's been any good, but it feels good. It feels good to at least be here talking a bit, sharing, and I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you also are having exciting insights and things that you're learning and a sense of becoming ever more who you truly are. All right. Take care, and hopefully I'll see you soon.